Okay, sit in that chair. All right, here's the deal. Marshmallow for you. You can either wait, and I'll give you another one if you wait, or you can eat it now. When I come back, I'll give you another one, so then you'll have two. But stay in here and stay in the chair till I come back, okay? All right. I'm gonna go do something and then I'll come back.
It smells yummy. It smells really good.
All right, so it's up to you. You can have it now or you can wait. Okay? I'll be back. Stay in the chair, okay? Okay. All right, so I'm gonna leave and then I'll come back, okay? So you can either eat it right now or you can wait. Either way, okay? Okay. How'd you do? Did you do good? You did?
Yeah.
You wanted to eat it, didn't you? Yeah. So did I tell you I'd give you another one? Okay, now you can have both. You need them.
Isn't that just like us, right? I mean, we're not going crazy as grown-ups maybe over marshmallows, but we do the similar kind of thing with clothes or cars or shoes or jewelry, accessories, maybe a house, a boat. We do that kind of stuff all the time. And there's nothing wrong with any of those things per se. The problem is that we get to the point where we love those things and want those things and desire those things more than the things of God. In fact, we put them in the place that God should be, and we don't have worship services for them or anything, but in effect, we worship those things. The Bible calls that mammon. We dealt with that a little bit last week. Mammon is that personification, if you will, of all the stuff, money, things, material things in this world, that if you kind of put it all together in the form of a false god, that you would actually worship that. What would that maybe perhaps look like? Here's an extreme example. I'm not a big basketball fan, but I know this story. The story of Latrell Sprewell, maybe you know who he is. He played for the Minnesota Timberwolves. In 2005, he made $14.6 million, right? Now, towards the end of the season, he'd negotiated a contract extension. The Timberwolves were going to offer him, for the next year, $21 million. A lot of money. $7 million more, right? 50% raise, okay? That's a huge chunk of change, right? Who would like a 50% raise? That's a pretty good deal. Latrell Sprewell turned it down. He found it insulting that he would only offer him $21 million from his $14 million current contract. He was asked, would you keep playing with the team, maybe negotiate some more? And he said, well, no. Why should I help them win the title? Why should I put myself at risk when they don't seem to care anything about me? After all, get this, I'm not making it up, I have a family to feed. He couldn't feed them on $14 million, and apparently he could barely do it on $21 million. That was an insult. So he walked away, never played basketball again. Now, that's funny, but isn't it interesting how easy it is to recognize greed when you see it in someone else? In someone else. I mean, in someone else it's very clear. Money is neither good nor bad. There's nothing right or wrong about money in and of itself or stuff in and of itself. The problem is when we make it a substitute for God in our life. And how we handle money and stuff shows materially, in effect, where we are spiritually. Have you ever said, for example, if I made his kind of money or her kind of money, I would definitely handle it better than they did. I would manage it better, I would spend it better, I would give more, save more, whatever it is. We're going to do it better than them. But have you ever considered the possibility that somebody might say the exact same thing and look at you? No, not me. You don't realize what I make, Jim. Nobody thinks that. I'm not rich. I don't think that. Nobody's going to say that about me. We're blind because rich is such a moving target. We're blind to all these psychological and sociological and economic forces that are at us every day. Here's what I mean. Everybody in this room lives in a certain kind of neighborhood, drives a certain kind of car, wears certain kind of clothes, goes to certain kinds of restaurants and all those things because they're accustomed to a certain style of life given the money that they make, right? That's true for everybody, okay? We're accustomed to that. That's just who we are. That's just normal. That's what we're used to. And because of that, we tend to really be around, for the most part, people in our little bracket or perhaps maybe some people in the bracket above us. And when we start thinking about how much we have, and so we never compare ourselves to everybody around in the world. We only compare ourselves to the people in our bracket and the people above us. Tell me that's not true. That's how we are. Our bracket, people above us. Fred has that and I don't. Well, Bob and I are about in the same place. Whatever, that's how we work. Here's just an example of what I'm saying. Take just a school, for example. Tell me that there aren't secretaries, for example, that wish that they made teacher money, teachers who didn't wish they made principal money, principals who didn't wish they made superintendent money, and on and on. That's true for every job, anywhere you might be. Everybody looks at themselves, looks around them, and hopes that they get into the bracket ahead of them. Here's what I'm saying. In the United Kingdom, they did a study several years ago, and here's what they were looking for. Is there an amount that if somebody made, they would finally be happy and satisfied with that amount, right? Could they hit a certain number and then finally be, great, I'm okay? Guess what? They could never find the amount. Because satisfaction, when it came to money and stuff, had nothing to do with amounts of money that you made. Do you want to know the only way that they could measure satisfaction in this study? The only time anybody was ever satisfied was when they knew they made more than everybody else around them. It had nothing to do with, well, I make $100,000 and so do all my friends. No, I'm only satisfied if I know all my friends make 100, but I make 110. Okay? It had nothing to do with the amount. It had everything to do with I make more, have more than all of these guys. Because no matter where we are, we want to be at the next level. We're always looking for the next level, and we're never satisfied with where we are. And that's because rich and this idea of satisfaction and money is such a moving target. It always is eluding us. And because of that, if we're honest, whether we make a little, somewhat medium, or a lot, that's not the issue. Because of that, when the Bible talks, as it does, hundreds and hundreds of times about money and stuff, here's the way we are. We think it's an excellent message for the other fella, for somebody else. It's maybe for those people over there. Or maybe we'll say, yes, this is good. This is for me when I get to some level, or then in certain different stages of life. It doesn't speak to me now because I don't fit. It'll speak to me then when I've arrived, when I have all this and so. And so we find all kinds of reasons to ignore, essentially, what the Scriptures are telling us. And they're telling us to not let money and stuff choke Jesus and His values out of our life. Here's just 3 quick examples. This is the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. So, if I come to a place where I'm daydreaming and I'm thinking of new ways to make more money and spend more money and get more things, what's Paul saying? That love is the root of evil. It's going to pierce me. It's going to destroy my faith. It's going to destroy my connection with God. Here's another example from the Old Testament in Proverbs. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. So, it's the person who says, I am going to be secure, everything is going to go my way, I have stored up enough that I can ride out any storm, any recession, any bad health, anything. No, you can't. Your security, I don't care how much money you have in the bank, that is not what your security should be, because it cannot guarantee anything ultimately for you. You will fall. Here's one other one just from the mouth of Jesus in Matthew 6. No one, he says, could serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money, or that mammon word, that's the way that money is translated there, that God-like thing that personifies stuff, okay? You're going to have to make a choice. You can't serve both. We think we possess money and stuff. It's ours. We can control it. But in reality, when you begin to be loving it and serving it, it controls you. You don't possess it. It possesses you. Friends, every dollar that we receive is both a blessing and a test from God. That's reality. Whether you receive lots of dollars, a medium amount of dollars, or hardly any dollars, okay? Every dollar you receive is both a blessing and a test from God. Well, how's it a blessing? It's a blessing in that He has given it to you. He's provided it to you. It's a sign of His provision and love. How is it a test? Because every dollar He's asking, how will you honor me with it? Will you honor me with it? Is it mine or is it yours? Okay? Now, what we do with our stuff is a big deal. And one of the most important chapters in Scripture that begin to lay this out is in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy chapter 15. If you've got a Bible, turn there. If not, that blue one under you or in front of you is available. And turn to page 187. And as you're doing that, let me sort of set the scene for you. Because Deuteronomy 15 is giving us a picture of what a godly economy should look like. If everybody in an economy that honors God lived according to His principles, these are the kinds of things that would happen. Now, we don't have the time today to go through the entire chapter. So, as you're looking, let me set the scene. It's talking a lot about Sabbaths. Now, we mentioned Sabbath in a message a couple of weeks ago in a different context. Sabbath is sort of setting aside a time, particularly a day, in order to trust in, commune with God, to rest in His presence and His provision. It's saying, I believe that God will provide for me in 6 days, and so I rest on the 7th, knowing that 7th day, I'm not working, I'm not doing anything because I'm trusting in His provision, right? You're resting in worship with Him. That's one way to think about Sabbath, but there are a number of other ways that are mentioned in this chapter. For example, they talk about Sabbath years for land. Here's what that means. I'm a farmer, for example. I have a certain tract of land that I'm growing barley or wheat on. Now, I do that for 6 years. In the 7th year, I let the land rest. I'm not going to plant any crops in that 7th year. Now, because I've been farming it for 6 years, there's some loose seeds scattered, and so some things are going to come up and grow, and I'm going to let the poor have all of it. They're going to come in and they're going to reap that field, okay? Because I'm trusting that God will provide for me in 6 years, and I'm going to have enough to ride out the 7th, and my land is going to rest. That's what God was saying to them about a Sabbath year for the land. He also talked about a Sabbath for slaves and years. So if somebody became indentured to me, a slave to me, okay? I couldn't keep them forever. I kept them for 6 years, released them on the 7th. I didn't have a slave for life. And I wouldn't just sort of, well, they've been my slave, and all of a sudden, okay, you're free, take off. No. I provide for them now. Provide them, for example, maybe some livestock or means to grow crops or whatever, so that they can survive on their own. It's a release, okay? There was also a Sabbath year for debt. Now, this is the kicker for this chapter, okay? Here's what he's saying. Suppose that I borrow $1,000 from you in year 1. I have 6 years to pay that off before that loan is released, right? So there's a good likelihood that I'm going to pay your $1,000 off. But what if I borrowed that loan from you at year 5.5 or 6? You'd say, I don't know if that's a good investment. I'm probably not going to get my whole loan back. That's right. The reason that happened, the way God created that, is because He didn't want Israel to have this vastly rich group and this vastly poor group in the middle. He wanted to have release and not have a debted group of people that were always beholden to the ones above. But for all of this to happen, guess what would happen? Somebody would have to lose. The rich people would not get all of their money back in a debt. The master who released his slave would lose something to get him started. The farmer who had a field would lose what that 7th year was. In order to follow God, there had to be some kind of loss. And as a result of that, we don't have any evidence that they ever actually followed this plan. More on that in a minute. Where is this based on? Deuteronomy 15:15 says this. Remember that you were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I give you this command today. So, they were slaves for 400 years in Egypt. God redeems them in powerful and miraculous ways. He does not want them to forget that they once were slaves. He's made them free, but He didn't want them to forget it, because then they would just sort of act like they earned it. It's all theirs and they're entitled, and they would move on. In the same way, see, God was richly and lovingly generous with them. And when that captured their heart as it should, they were in turn to be gratefully generous with each other. That's what this whole thing is based on. The problem is, for that to work, somebody's going to lose sometimes. You're going to lose a bit of your loan. You're going to have to set the slave free with some of your stuff. You're not going to get that 7th year of those crops. And when it all came down to it, we don't have any evidence that Israel followed this. Why? 1 3-letter word. But. Well, I know that this would be a great system, but I want my loan money back. Well, I know this would really work and it would be helpful, but I don't want to give you the sheep and the seed and whatever to get you started in your life. I'd rather you just stay my slave. That would be easier for me. Well, I know that I should provide for the poor, and I do have enough after 6 years of growing, but think of how much better it would be if I did the 7th year. There was always some reason for that not to work. And that's true in our lives too, right? Well, I know God wants me to give, but I know that I should not keep buying these things. I spend more money than I make on these credit cards, but I want it. You name it. It all comes down to that 1 3-letter word, which has so much power. And we use to make sure that we do not follow what God wants for our lives. I'm just one person. How can I fix it? There's always some reason, but defines everything. We don't want to move forward because somebody might lose and we don't want to be the loser. Here's how he begins to lay it out. In Deuteronomy 15, we'll stay in verse 7. If there is a poor man among your brothers in any of the towns of the land that the Lord your God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted toward your brother. Rather, be open-handed and freely lend him whatever he needs. Be careful not to harbor this wicked thought. The 7th year, the year for canceling debts is near, so that you will not show ill will toward your needy brother and give him nothing. He may then appeal to the Lord against you, and you will be found guilty of sin. Give generously to him, and do so without a grudging heart. Then because of this, the Lord your God will bless you in all your work and in everything you put your hand to. There will always be poor people among you in the land. Therefore I command you to be open-hearted toward your brothers and toward the poor and needy in your land. Now, you just heard him say there's always going to be poor around and stuff, but in verse 4 he said this, however, there need be no poor people among you, for in the land the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance, he will richly bless you. So on the one hand he says, there won't be any poor, there shouldn't be any poor. On the other hand he says, there always will be. How does that work? Because he knows that the only way that this whole poverty thing is eradicated is if his people are open-handed and not tight-fisted. And as long as they're going to be tight-fisted, as long as they're going to think, well, if I loan that out in the 7th year, I'm not going to get it all back, as long as they say, I don't want to give up for that slave, as long as they say, I don't want to not farm that crop, then there will be poor in the midst of them. He's asking for them to be not tight-fisted, but open-handed. Tight-fisted relates to the poor out of self-interest. If it's about me, I'm going to lose, and I don't want to lose, so I'm not doing it. Open-handed relates to the poor out of a sense of gratitude and grateful generosity. It's not about need. It's about my ability to meet the need. It's not about having it all worked out. I'm going to get a guaranteed return on investment. It's about saying, if God has supplied and I am able, then I have this open-handed sense where I'm open-handed, my heart is right, and I'm ready to share. And that's true even in the 6th year when I might come out the loser. It's a different attitude. You remember, it all starts out with the heart. In fact, it doesn't change. The heart is everything, friends. If God has your heart, you will not withhold anything from him. But if he doesn't have your heart, you will always find the reason to say but. There will always be some reason there, and it'll be a good reason. But if he has your heart, you won't withhold anything. So attitude is huge. A tight-fisted person, their heart is resistant. An open-handed person is generous and loving. Remember what Jesus said, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. It's about heart. But it's not just limited to that. It goes into actions. By the way, if you just have a right heart but you never act, you really don't have a right heart. A right heart always produces actions. It has to. Okay? And the actions we're talking about, if you're hard-hearted, tight-fisted, we will never act. There will always be a but. There will always be some reason we won't go. But if our hands are open and generous, then the actions will show, because we won't possess, we will freely give, share, and be generous. If our heart is right, you're going to see it in our actions. Now, there are 3 things you're going to see a lot of. You're going to first see contentment. Contentment really is this. It's not that complicated. Contentment is an open-handed desire to know I have everything and God has given me everything. And I'm content in who I am and what I have in him. I ran across a really cool story in our church's national online magazine about a family that we have a connection with, the Dieters. Okay? That is Pat and Debbie Williams on the left. They used to be members here until they had to move back to Alabama. That's their daughter in the middle and her husband. They're pastors in Talmadge, Ohio. She was blogging that at the end of last year, about this time, she just felt so much that they had been caught up in the consumerism of our world, and they wanted to make a radical change. And so you know what they did voluntarily this year? They decided throughout the entire 2018, so they're 10 into the 11th month of doing this, they were not going to buy a single new thing. Okay? Now, I don't mean they didn't buy soap or deodorant or they didn't buy food or shampoo. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean they didn't buy new shoes, they didn't buy new socks, they didn't buy a new pair of pants, they didn't buy shirts, they didn't buy a piece of furniture. Anything like that. Nothing. Not a birthday gift, not toys. And she's been blogging recently about how they're going to have to be very creative, for example, at Christmas, because toys, right? They got young kids, no toys, no shirt, no whatever. Okay? So why would you do this? Why even think about this, right? They felt really challenged and convicted about this. They wanted simplicity in their life. They realized how much stuff they had was literally crowding out their lives. They were having tough. Where am I going to put all this stuff we bought? Whether it's home decor, clothes, whatever. They had it all over the place. And they also realized they had a gratitude problem. They were spending so much money buying new stuff, they didn't appreciate the stuff they already had. And so they had a problem with gratitude. They also realized that they had some relational issues. Think about it. Every minute that you spend searching on Amazon or eBay or whatever online shopping network or walking around Kohl's or any place else is a minute that you cannot have sharing with kids, friends, or whatever. And so they realized there was a gulf of relationships that, in terms of absent time. But they also knew beyond that, they had a creativity. They wanted to be more creative with what they had, and they wanted to save more, and so it's changing their whole lives. And they're recognizing how now they are being so content in ways that they never were before. Now, I'm not asking you to do that, but I am asking you to consider something. When you get your first job, like I did perhaps at a grocery store, part-time, let's assume this is sort of like your sense of need, right? I mean, what do you really need when you're 16, 17, 18? My parents made me pay for my share of the car insurance, and I needed some money to go out with friends or to maybe buy a new outfit or whatever. But I didn't have any real sense of need, right? And then, you go and you get your first real job, let's say, post-college or even post-high school, right? You're starting a career. Now you have real need, right? You got rent to pay for. You got your own groceries to buy. Nobody's buying you clothes every, so often in new seasons or so. You've got real need that you have to deal with, okay? And then maybe you get married. You start having kids. Need really obviously expands then, right? More mouths to feed, more places to put everybody. But here is the problem. In our culture, our sense of need never stops. It keeps going up. In fact, if we make X, we think our sense of need is X plus. We often spend way more than what we have. And here is what we think our sense of need is. And if it keeps growing, it keeps growing. How do you know, Jim? Take somebody, for example. Joe gets a raise. And Joe's immediate thought is, think of all the new things now I can get. It never enters Joe's mind that this is a blessing from God, and as a result of that, what might Joe be able to do to honor God with this? Because it just expands radically his sense of need. And friends, as long as our need expands more and more and more, we're never going to be content. We're always going to be tight-fisted. We're always going to find a reason to say, but think another person. Joe works in the same place as Bob. Bob gets a raise too. But Bob's capped his sense of need. It's not continuing to grow like Joe's. And so now Bob can take care of his family. Bob can do all of those things. But there's so much more that Bob can do as a result of the fact that he is now content in who he is and what God has given him. It's not a gimmick. It's a spiritual change in our heart. And when that happens, we become brand new people when it comes to contentment. That's one thing. Here's another. It's called gratitude. Gratitude is huge, friends. That's saying I'm opening my hands because I'm grateful to what God has blessed me with. And I want to be blessed to be a blessing, right? So perhaps you've ever had one of these. I don't know. $100 bill, right? Whose is this? I did not find it laying around. I know it's not yours, so don't take it. Don't ask for it. But who owns this? Whose possession is it? Okay? If it's mine, let's say, if I think this is mine, I own it. Well, what's my heart here? It belongs to me. It's exclusively mine. Nobody has any rights to it. Nobody can determine it. I made it. I can determine whatever penny goes to, and it's all mine, and nobody can have it, and that's just the way it is. Am I going to be grateful with that attitude? Of course not. My heart is tight. It's mine, and nobody can have it. And I will always find a way to say, but no matter what opportunity comes my way. That's if I'm an owner. But the Scriptures lay out that I'm not an owner. No matter what I have, I am a steward. A steward is a radically different thing. A steward is a manager. A steward says, ultimately, this is God's. And while it is in my ledger, if you will, to manage it for a time, it ultimately and always belongs to Him. And so as a result of that, I've received a blessing from Him, and therefore there's also a test, too, in terms of how I'm going to honor him with it. And if that's my attitude, I can't help but be grateful. Because God has lavishly blessed me, and my heart and hands are not going to be tight. They're going to be open. They're going to be ready to share because I want to be a blessing to others. And there's going to be a generosity thing. Generosity is huge here, friends. Here's how generosity works. Okay, it means I'm opening my hands because God's generosity towards me makes me generous with others. Right? Proverbs 22:9, I love this phrase that's there. He who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives his bread to the poor. Think of what life would be like if you had a generous eye in the world. Well, a generous eye is going to change everything in your heart. First and foremost, generosity is going to work this way. There are going to be times spontaneously for you to act in ways that honor God. You're going to spontaneously be presented with the opportunity to help and bless others, right? But not only that, there are going to be times that are planned, where you say, okay, I'm going to organize my life and cap my sense of need and promise to honor God with what he's given me, a tenth of that, and return that to him. But beyond that, there's going to be sacrificial generosity, right? Where there's going to be times, because I've capped that sense of need, that God's going to be able to do abundantly things in my life that he's never been able to do before. Where does this begin, right? It begins with your first job. It began in high school for me when I worked at a grocery store and might have made $80, $100 a week, right? If I was lucky. That's where it began. Okay? But it doesn't stop there. Well, how much? How does it work? How far does it go? Friends, it's not about amount. Stop thinking about math. Think about heart. Heart is everything. There are people that make tons and tons of money that always find a way to say but and never act. And then there are people that make zero, nada, nothing and are working sacrificially extra shifts in order to be able to give. The issue is not amount, it's heart. Here's what C.S. Lewis said on the matter. It's a very challenging quote. I'm afraid that the only safe rule is to give more than we can spare. If our giving habits do not at all pinch or hamper us, I should say they're too small. There ought to be things we want to do but cannot do because of our giving expenditures exclude them. Wow, does that challenge me? Because it's a matter of heart. And if it's a matter of heart, everything revolves around that. Here's how I want to share that as we close out today. Imagine that this is your capped sense of need. No matter how much you make, this is where you've capped it, right? And you're going to honor God with that, tithe with that, take care of your family, and so. Imagine that this is the family beyond you, extended family, friends who might be in need, right? And the rest is the world around you, okay? So no matter how much you make, you've decided that you're going to cap that sense of need. And God is providing for you. He's providing you richly. And you are returning the tithe to him as that happens. And you're taking care of your family. And as things grow, you're able to do more. And see how it's running over? Now you have the resources because you've saved it and capped that sense of need to help extended family who might be in need and friends who might be in need. And see how that's running over again? You've continued to cap that. And you've continued to live. You know what that is? That is orphans that are going to be fed through you. That is churches around the world that are going to be planted through you. That's missionaries who are going to be able to go to foreign fields that you can't physically go through you. That's pregnant ladies and single mothers who are going to be blessed through you. That are families who are going to have their trajectories changed through you. That is lavish kingdom stuff that you're going to be able to do in your life, not because you make millions of dollars, but because you've capped your sense of need and honor God with it. And you don't even know how far that's going to be able to go. But over a lifetime, tons and tons of lives are going to be changed because you're not saying but anymore. You're saying, my hand is open. And I want to share, I want to give, I want to serve. And who knows what God will be able to do through you through the rest of your life. Where does this start? Because friends, it does not start by being more disciplined. It doesn't start by doing great at money managing and selling stocks or any of that kind of stuff. It's not a math issue. It's a heart issue. It starts in the heart. Listen to the words of Paul about Jesus. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor, so that you, through his poverty, might become rich. Here's what he's saying. Jesus sat in heaven with all the riches that you can imagine, He didn't have to leave. He could have stayed there. We didn't deserve it. We certainly had no demands to make upon him. Jesus left the wealth of heaven to become poor here on earth. He lived to suffer and die for your sin so that you, through his poverty and taking on your sin, might become eternally rich in him. And you've become that. He left the treasure of heaven. Why? To make you his treasure. And when you find that he has really made you his treasure, you know what will happen? You will make him yours. And when you've made him yours, it transforms your whole heart. The way to become generous in every respect, money, stuff, time, everything. You want to know where it comes from? Bathing yourself in the generosity of Jesus Christ. That's where it is. And when you become generous, or when you've recognized his generosity toward you, it changes your heart forever. Would you pray with me? Lord Jesus, we put indeed everything in your hands. We confess, God, that everything we have is ultimately yours. It's not ours. It's not about math. It's not about buts and whether we could or should or not. We put it in your hands, God, and we say, you've given us everything. Ultimately, all we have is about you. We put it in your hands and we ask, Lord, that you would take it and use it for your glory. Would you transform our family, our homes? Would you transform our church? Would you transform through us over time orphans and mission fields and church plants and people who are hungry and sick and don't have housing, and oh God, what you can do through us. We ask that you would do it in Jesus' name. Amen.